It's a video focused on the last chapter, chapter 9 of Landsberg's The Experience of Death. Every single chapter of this is important. I skipped the one about St. Augustine, but everything is rich. But I find this the most problematic in what is a very problematic essay, because I say that for this reason. Landsberg is brilliant in his exposition of the human problem of death, the specifically human problem of death. On the other hand, it's not clear that even what his solution is to that, or what his reasons are for his particular solution, I should say. And again, I think a part of that is because he's a Christian thinker. And this last section, which is, I suppose, in some way an argument for the Christian view of death, is, I would say, rather a profession of faith on his part as a Christian philosopher, or just as a Christian. For instance, on page 226, at the end of that long first paragraph, he says right here, "Let us therefore begin by accepting that it is the Christian life in all its forms which underlies the conversion of man's attitude with regard to death." As we saw in his criticism of Plato, for Landsberg, and I think it's true for every Christian, there is a before and after. There's a before Christ, there's before the appearance of Jesus, and there's an after, and everything has changed. And for Landsberg, that change is profound, because it's the appearance of Christ that initiates a change in how human beings saw themselves, and an opportunity for them to see themselves in their true guise, he would say, and that is as unique individuals. In other words, as persons. And that this also initiates them into a problematic relationship with their own mortality. This is the ground that we've covered before, so there's no reason for me to go thoroughly into that again. I would refer you to earlier videos. Why is death problematic to the person? Is, to a certain extent, why is death problematic to the Christian? So in this last section, he's trying to, I don't know what he's trying to do. He's describing the Christian view of death and the Christian approach to death, and how it is a kind of a fulfillment. And as he says, things that were foreshadowed in Greek philosophy, perhaps other forms of philosophy, are fulfilled in Christianity. The idea of the afterlife, the idea of the person, the hope for that, all this is sort of fulfilled in Christianity for him. And he returns, and here I'm on page 224 at the very bottom, around right here. He returns to some of the ideas, or one of the ideas, fundamental idea that he introduced in section 5, when he says man's participation in the eternity of the divine can only achieve total realization beyond death, and in such a way that death itself becomes a form of birth superior to empirical birth. If there is a life which is really death, there is a death which is in truth life. This, for the Christians among you, and there's no reason to be a Christian, you're right, unless you're a Christian. If you're a Muslim, or if you're Jewish, or if you are, Landsberg was Jewish, he converted to Catholicism. If you are a Hindu, or if you are an atheist, I'm not trying to change you. But if you're a Christian, you recognize the rhetoric here, the language here. My own Catholic background, it echoes in the Catholic idea of dying into life, or the great hymn, Christian hymn. It's not a specifically Catholic one, wasn't written by a Catholic. Shepherd me, O Lord, beyond my wants, beyond my needs, from death into life. I heard that once sung at a funeral. Very powerful. It's a Christian idea that we die into eternal life. And Landsberg is leaning very heavily on this idea. This is the structure of human existence. As he says in section 5, every being is trying to realize itself. It's trying to actualize its potentiality, a very deep idea in philosophy, history philosophy. And so are human beings, human persons. What's unique about the human person, perhaps, is that the human person can't fulfill itself in its earthly existence. That its self-fulfillment must be something that takes place beyond death. That's why I would characterize Landsberg as presenting a being, human existence as a being beyond death. It's not something that appears in this essay, but I think it's a fair characterization of the philosophy of human existence against Heidegger's being towards death that Landsberg is offering. The philosophy of hope, really, and that hope being, as he said, always for the same thing, and that is for a self-realization beyond death, which entails or necessitates survival. Now, whether or not this is true or something acceptable, it certainly raises really interesting issues about everything, human life, about death. And it is, an interesting, I think, Landsberg, one of the greatest, I have to say, one of the greatest things I've ever read about death. Something that stands up to a Plato and Epicurus, something in importance. It's not as widely read as Plato or Epicurus, but that's a shame. Landsberg was a great thinker and, and gives us a certain version, I think, of the Christian view of death. Now, we will return later on when we read C.S. Lewis's A Grief Observed to another Christian view of death, which in some respects is recognizable in what Landsberg said, because we have two Christians thinking about death, so there's bound to be similarities, but quite different. I mean, that's the thing about any religion. There's not a single take on things. There's always a variety of opinion, as well there should be, on matters of what it means to think about life in a Christian way, what it means to think about death in a Christian way, or a Jewish way, or a Muslim way, or a Hindu way. There's plurality of voices. So we've read one, and I would say a remarkable one in Landsberg.